Hey, Gerald, did you realize it's National Quesadilla Day?
I didn't know that.
Do you know what I'm having for dinner?
Burritos?
Pizza. What is up, everyone? It's another edition of the PHNX Suns show. I'm Espo. That's Gerald. I wanted to bring a little extra energy on this Wednesday.
Okay.
Because I realize vacation's like 2 days away. So,
there you go.
Yeah, why
there
not? No, basketball is so close, and we've got plenty to talk about. We are going to dive deep into the Kevin Durant contract extension talk. We're going to take a look at it from every angle and why, if it doesn't get done, you shouldn't panic. But I want to start, Gerald. I've been seeing a lot of these tweets from NBA teams about the boys are back, right? Mm-hmm. Photos of guys hugging, smiling, just looking so happy to be back with their teammates. And I saw a couple Suns fans saying, where's ours? Mm-hmm. I want to see this. Well, guess what? I think it's a horrible idea. I don't want to see these guys smiling when they come in. I don't want to see them laughing or high-fiving. No, I want to see them come in with their lunch pails, right? I want to see them come in angry at how things played out last year. I want to see them come in with the glare of a ruthless killer for the basketball season, ready to rip out the hearts of anybody that stands in their way. I don't need high fives and smiles and good vibes. I'm ready to go take the Larry O'Brien trophy out of the Celtics' hands. I want to pry it out of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's fingers. That's the attitude I want. I want to rip the hearts out of everybody in Minnesota, like I'm a Viking going in there. That's the mentality I want to see. So no grinning and, hey, good to see you. This ain't middle school. You're not seeing your friends. You're coming to do a job. So come with that mindset, come correct, and let's get this thing started.
We are 2 for 2 in the last few days of starting the show off with an edition of What Really Grinds My Gears by Espo.
Yeah. Oh,
I didn't even notice that was happening, to be honest with you.
I think I have like the algorithm that's just literally made to upset me in the morning. So. I see these things and I'm like, well, got to write that down for the show.
There you go.
So, there you go. That's my
no smiles on media day.
No, I don't want. Oh man, it's just great to be back playing basketball. I'm so excited for what this season could be and what this could mean. Leave the laughs and the yucks to guys like us sitting in our thrones here on set.
Okay. So I am allowed to smile on media day.
We're allowed to.
All right.
Because we're just here to have fun. They're there to do a job.
Okay. Gotcha.
I mean, we're here to do a job, but it's much less important.
No fun on the job for them.
Yes, Ashley, that was another edition of Old Man Yells at Clouds.
The sequel's always better.
Or as Andy has dubbed it, Espo seems angry. I think that's a good. I think that's also a
Espo
good.
Seems angry.
I think that should be a new segment.
It should be.
Espo seems angry. So, one thing, I'm not angry about, and I think a lot of people might be in the next few weeks, is what's going on with the Kevin Durant contract extension. He is eligible for a 1-year extension right now, and I know that people have that October 21st date circled on the calendar. Maybe not here, but around the league going, is he going to get that extension before the deadline? But it's not as cut and dry as that, right?
No, it's not. And so, like, a lot of people would probably push back on the idea of an extension at all, which, is wild to me because I think with Kevin Durant coming off his healthiest season yet, he's probably in a place where he's feeling good about his body, his recovery from the Achilles tear from a few years ago, the way that he's responded in a way you typically don't see from guys like that. So he is eligible for just a 1-year extension on top of the 2 years that he's currently owed. And it would be for a substantial amount of money here, but it's one of those things where there are definite pros to giving him an extension and locking in, one of your 2 best players for another year. And there would be considerable cons if something were to go wrong and just the sheer amount of money that you're committing there. So if we want to take a look at what that contract would look like, if he were to take the 1-year extension this year, it would be a $59.5 million extension. Like you mentioned, he has until October 21st to agree to that extension the day before the new regular season begins. So he's already owed $51.2 million for this season. He'll make $54.7 million for the following season. And then in the summer of 2026, he's set to be a free agent. So if he agreed to this extension, that would put him for another year on the books, $59.5 million, for a total of about $165.4 million over 3 years. So let's just start with the pros. What are the pros to extending Kevin Durant by 1 year?
Well, I think 1 year, you go, okay, so that puts him at year 37, correct? With a 1 year extension.
1 year, he would be turning 38 right before the start of that third season.
So I think you're hedging your bet there,
Mm-hmm.
Because we've seen guys in that year 38 not have success. Steve Nash struggled in that. Tim Duncan. There's guys that they hit a wall. But that's not necessarily going to happen at 38. I think you get into 39, 40, maybe that's more of a concern. But it also says we believe in this current iteration, and it's not a short term. It's, hey, we're going to give you multiple years here to do it. Plus, it squashes any of this ridiculous trade talk like came up at over the offseason with Houston and these other teams that are basically trying to stir up controversy and cause a rift in order to try to basically help themselves out. So you kill that and really take that away as a narrative in a season that you really can't afford distractions. I think that's a major benefit there as well. And look, it's Kevin Durant. Right. He's still one of the best players in the game, even if a little bit falls off his fastball, to mix sports metaphors. Right. He still is at that point a top 15 player in the world. Like he's top 5 right now, I think, or top 6 right now in the league. So even if he drops off a little bit, you're still having one of the best players in the league. So I think a 1 year makes sense to me from that standpoint.
It does. To your point about like kind of putting the outside noise to rest a little bit, that is a helpful thing if you were to extend him. And you don't extend a guy just for that reason, obviously. But like you said, like Kevin Durant coming off this season, healthiest season he's had since 2019, played 75 games. And on top of that, he was really, really good. It wasn't just that he was available. It's the fact that he was second team All-NBA, put up a 27-6-5 stat line with a block thrown in on like 50, 40, 85 shooting splits. Like he is still an elite player in this league. He's still a player who can win you playoff games and who can be the best player on a championship team, even at this point. Now, obviously, you're projecting for a few years into the future, but this is a guy that does envision himself staying healthy. This is a guy that does envision, like, I am going to be an elite player until I'm done. He wasn't ruling out an Olympic run again 4 years from now, which is crazy. And then obviously, it's not necessarily fully in his power. Father time is going to kick in at some point in time. And like you said, there's going to be some regression. But this is what happens when you are a place that is a destination for superstars. Like this is kind of a necessary evil in order to keep superstars happy, even if you're overpaying a little bit on the back end. And in this case, 60 million is not anything to just, throw at the wall.
I don't know. If you're Matt Ishbia, maybe.
I mean, if you're Matt Ishbia, yes. But it is a potential concern, but it is something that, honestly, to keep superstar players happy, to keep everything in harmony, and to keep your 2 best players around, it's something that you have to consider.
Well, I did a little research. I know that surprises you. That's not But look, if you take LeBron out, I think LeBron is the best case scenario. Not much regression. Still plays like the guy that has been Kevin Durant for years now. But if you put that at the high end of the spectrum, there's not a lot of examples of 38-year-olds that were stars still playing in the league, right? This is a rare thing. But you look at Karl Malone. At 38, he averaged almost 20 points, 10 rebounds. Still very effective. Michael Jordan, which granted a little different, he came back after taking time off, but he averaged an impressive 23, 5, and 4 at 38. Like Kevin Durant will still be able to do a lot of what he does. And let's be frank, it's not like freak athleticism that Kevin Durant has relied on.
Yes.
It's intelligence, it's being able to hit those jump shots, and it's being able to be clutch. I know some people don't believe in that, but when it comes to Kevin Durant, I believe in it. And so he's been able to do those things, and I think that Achilles injury and coming back from it proved that it's not like if the athleticism starts to go that things are going to change dramatically, because most guys never come back from that injury that he had, or at least not even close.
Right.
He did more than that. So I don't think Father Time's going to be as much of an impact, at least at age 38.
When you can shoot and you're that size, you're going to be able, your game is going to age pretty gracefully, because like you said, it's not like, yes, being athletic helps, being able to drive and dunk on people still helps, but he's lanky, he's very tall, and he's super skilled, which is the thing that's going to keep him in the league well beyond his athletic prime. The fact that he can be a shooter, that he can create his own shot, that he can create separation. He's so skilled with his handle, with his ability to get off jump shots over, tall defenders. Those are all things that are going to help his game age. So even though, he might not be driving to the rim as much, this upcoming season, the following season, the year after that, he's still going to be able to put up 20 plus like it's no big deal, because of the skill set and the hard work that he puts in, like the reps that he's, doing every single day. You mentioned coming back from the Achilles tear. I really do think that the immense hard work that he's put in on his body and on just doing those plays time after time after time, those reps time after time, that is what makes him such an all-time great.
Yeah, I get that a $59.5 million price tag on a 1-year extension seems astronomical.
Yes.
Couple things. I mean, it is an astronomical amount of money, but one of the factors you got to remember that we're going to see an increase in the salary cap with TV money. But you also have to look at it and go, okay, to your point, we're paying the superstar tax in some ways. It also shows that other guys, hey, we're willing to invest if you're one of the greats and you come here to Phoenix. It does make me wonder, does Devin Booker start to feel a certain way because he's not the highest paid guy in the room, and at that point would be the third highest paid, right? In that year, I believe, or at least
in the extension year.
Yeah.
I think he's slightly above Bradley Beal that year, but yeah.
Yeah. So like, I doubt it would, but that's also, what's the dynamics there as well. But it's interesting that we've heard some things. We heard Josh Bartelstein talk with us about it, but there hasn't been a huge sense of urgency. It doesn't feel like to cross this threshold.
Yeah, well, because I mean, they do have a couple of weeks still if they were to hammer out this 1-year extension deal. They have until October 21st, so they still have plenty of time. We do see typically a lot of guys around, in the weeks leading up to that, come to those deals if it's going to happen. Sometimes it's just a no-brainer in the offseason, like we saw with Joel Embiid, like we've seen with Steph Curry in years past, that sort of thing. So they still have time to work that out if that's what they want to do. Do you want to talk about the cons to a potential extension?
Yeah, I think we certainly can. The cons to a 1 year, if you do it now, is you don't see how this year plays out,
right?
Which I think is a fair critique of doing it right now, and honestly, from both sides. I mean, Everybody hopes that this year is sunshine and rainbows and 55 to 60 wins and a Larry O'Brien trophy. But we hoped that last year too, when we saw how it played out. And if you wind up in another year like that, you got to wonder how would both sides feel that they came to the agreement. My guess is both sides would feel all right because it's still Kevin Durant, but you kind of hedge your bet if you're both sides in that case. And sometimes it's not the worst thing in the world to do.
Yeah, no, there's inherent risk in a deal like this. Like, obviously Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant, but he'll also be approaching his age 38 season by that point if you were to give him that extension. He's had 2 serious injuries in his career with the Achilles, and then earlier in his career with the OKC Thunder, he had the Jones foot fracture that made him miss, 80% of a season that year. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen again, but as you get older, you're more prone to the body breaking down, that type of thing. And even if, you avoid that worst case scenario that we're talking about that we hope never happens, if this Suns Big Three era implodes, if this season is another disappointment just like last season was, where you miss the playoffs or you get swept in the first round or you just don't even make the second or the conference finals, you have to reevaluate things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that KD is part of the problem or the reason that you fell short, but it is something to keep in mind because you then lose flexibility in that summer of 2026. Because as of right now, it's basically just Booker's deal, Bradley Beal's player option, which you're going to try and probably hope that he opts out of, even though he probably won't. Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, and then maybe the rookies will be on the books at that point. So you'll have flexibility if there are stars available to kind of reshuffle the deck and rebuild around Book at that point. But if you lock in KD, you're pretty much committing to the Big Three through 2027.
Well, and the other con too is it's a lot easier to, not that you're looking at this, but if you get to next year and you need this offseason and you need to make a change, it's a lot easier to trade the 37-year-old Kevin Durant with 1 year on his contract than 2 years with that second year being closer to $60 million at that point. So I understand the pros and I get where the cons would be on this as well. And I can understand how people would be on both sides of the fence. And speaking of the other side of the fence, when we come back from this break, we are going to talk about what a 2-year option would look like for Kevin Durant and why it may be the right path for the Phoenix Suns. Let's tell you about our friends over at Bet365. They have the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting. And look, Thursday night football sometimes cannot be all that exciting. Monday night wasn't particularly exciting in the first game, but live in-game betting can make it more interesting to watch your favorite games, even when things get a little out of hand. So right now, when you become a new customer with Bet365 and use the promo code PHNX365, deposit $10 and you're going to get 2 options here, right? And people love options. Number 1, the bet and get offer, where you bet up $5 or more and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. That is what I did, and I loved it. Or you can do the first bet safety net offer by placing up to $1,000 in a bet, and if your qualifying bet loses, you're going to receive that same amount back in bonus bets. So again, it's a safety net. Nothing too much to worry about there. MLB early payout is here, and they're great. So download the Bet365 app and use promo code PHNX365 when you sign up. Choose your offer and find out why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. Bet365 must be 21 or over, physically located in AZ. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Text NEXT STEP to 53342 or visit problemgambling.az.gov. Our friends at Gila River Resorts and Casinos are hosting us for our Cardinals away game parties, and it is spectacular. I love being out there at Wild Horse Pass, but they have 3 other locations that are just as good: Lone Butte, Vequiva, and Santan Mountain. They are all spectacular. If you're looking for casual dining or upscale dining, they got it for you. The best gaming floor in all the deserts there as well, plus one of the largest sports books you're going to find anywhere, with over 4,500 slots and floor games. You're not going to find a better place to be. So you do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit play@Gila.com for more details. And Gerald, as we talked about before the break, a 2-year deal is something that's a potential here. And there's some reasons why a 2-year deal might make a little bit more sense for both sides of the fence.
Yeah. So aside from the fact that you're guarding against injury, or if the Big 3 era implodes, you then have a chance to evaluate a year from now. That's the obvious benefit. If they want to continue their partnership, which according to what I've heard, both sides very much do, it makes sense for Kevin Durant financially to wait until next summer to commit to an extension because of what's called the over 38 rule. Now, for the people that are not familiar, the over 38 rule basically prevents teams from extending players to 4 or 5 year contracts if a portion of that contract extends beyond their 38th birthday. So basically, in KD's case, he's on the books for 2 years currently. This season at $51.2 million, next season at $54.7. The reason he's only eligible for a 1-year extension right now is because then that would be 3 years total, and you can't go to 4 or 5 because of the over 38 rule. And he turns 38 before the 2026-27 season. So if they extended him now, they could only do up to 3 years. If they wait until next year, after the first year of his contract is off, then he only has 1 year left, and then you can extend him 2 years because you get to that total of 3 years again. So if we want to look at the numbers of what the contract would look like here, he would have the $51 million for this season, $54.7 million for next season. Then he would get this extension. If he signed it next offseason, that would be $59.5 million in 2026-27, and then $64.3 million in 2027-28 for a total of $229.7 million over 4 years. So he basically makes an extra $64 million. He gets the last big payday of his career, and suddenly his contract aligns perfectly with Devin Booker's to where they're both off the books in 2028.
So $250 million over 4 years. Nice work if you can get it. Look, as an older guy, I'm offended by this over 38 rule.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Like, what's the point in the over 38 rule? What were they worried about? Like, were owners so worried that they couldn't help themselves from paying old guys for too long that they had to put a rule in there to handcuff you?
So the reason they did that was because teams were signing guys in their mid to late 30s to longer big contracts and then they were saying, like, this guy's probably going to retire with 1 or 2 years left on the contract. They'll make that money. It'll be guaranteed. It was basically a way of kind of paying extra money to guys that weren't going to necessarily play out those contracts, I guess. That was their main concern.
This sounds like
it's very anti-player, if you ask me.
You know those things that when you baby-proof a house, you put in the light socket, the little thing. Yeah. This feels like the NBA version of this for owners. We're going to put this so you don't shock yourself and do something stupid. We're going to put this rule in here so you can't do this with older players. Like, how about some fiscal responsibility from yourselves? Or holding yourself accountable rather than sticking it to the players so they can't do it. If you don't want to sign a guy to that long, don't do it. How about that without these stupid rules for it?
That's a fair point. Well, I will say to play devil's advocate, if there wasn't the age 38 rule, KD would probably be asking for a 3-year extension that would take him through his age 39 through 40 season, which, good for him. Maybe not what the Suns would want to do. And then that puts you between a rock and a hard place where it's either full max extension or nothing at all.
Well, welcome to the way business works. Like, that's just how it is. I want this. You want to pay that. Let's talk it out. If we can't, I go somewhere else. Like, I don't understand. The CBA feels like that they put so many rules in because the owners just can't help themselves. And look, Matt, I love you, buddy. I'm not trying to rip on you. No. I love what you're doing here and you're spending. But the fact that owners have to put in all these rules because they can't help themselves seems seems like a personal problem, not a problem the players should have to be footing the bill on.
No, I totally get it, but I do think like we were just talking about how if you don't come to an extension, it doesn't necessarily mean that the two sides want to part ways. If you do come to an extension before this deadline, it does kind of silence a lot of that outside noise. We'd be dealing with that 3 times as much as we are now if it wasn't for this rule, because then it would basically be, we got to give this guy a 3-year, $180 million, whatever that is, extension or nothing. And if nothing happens, then everyone would be like, oh my God, the Suns want to get rid of Kevin Durant. They don't want him anymore.
Gerald, you know what I call that?
What?
Good for business. That's what I call that. All right. Look, anyways, we'll leave the over 38 rule. I'm probably just offended because I am over 38.
Yeah, that might
would
be
like my big payday at some point. But, you talked with some of the experts in this space, Bobby Marks and Keith Smith of Sports Track, to kind of get a feel for what this would look like and why numbers would be the way they were.
Yeah, so this is projecting for the cap continuing to increase by a max of 10% each year, because as we know, these contract figures are a percentage of what the salary cap winds up being. So these numbers they might change a little bit, they might shift a little bit as time goes on, but everyone is projecting the salary cap to continue to rise by a max of 10% each year. So that's why these numbers would be what they were based on those percentages. It makes a lot of sense for Kevin Durant because he, he gets an extra $64 million. He gets an extra year tacked on. He does want to be in Phoenix. He does want to stay here. He wants to compete and win here. So it's something to consider. I think if you're the Suns, it gives you a year to evaluate. Like, did Kevin Durant stay healthy again this year? Did he play at a very high level again? Did we advance much further than we did last year when we got swept in the first round, or was it another early playoff exit? Those are all things that you kind of have time to evaluate. And if you're Kevin Durant, again, you get your last major payday probably of your career with this 2-year, $123 million extension, which would be nice. And then you and Book kind of finish out this chapter together with your contracts being under contract through 2028.
The one of the cons here for me, though, is when you look at the second apron rules.
Yes.
They get extremely punitive as these years move on, right? And so committing that much money, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. We'll get into our opinions on how we feel later in the show in terms of if they should. But to me, those punitive, things with the second apron get very, very difficult. Like draft picks start moving to the end of the first round, no matter where you are. Like you have to be very sure if you're making this move that it's the right move, because you are going to pay the price more than just financially.
You are, but I will say that I think if you look at the penalties and how many years you have to be in the second apron for that sort of thing to kick in, I think it might have already kicked in before Kevin Durant's extension would kick in, or it's like that very summer. So at least this way, if you wait until next summer, you are giving yourself to fully evaluate everything before you make that plunge. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. But for the people that are wanting to see Kevin Durant come to an extension before October 21st, if it doesn't happen, don't panic. It doesn't mean that Kevin Durant wants out. It doesn't mean that the Suns don't believe in Kevin Durant anymore, or that, KD wants a trade or doesn't believe in the Suns or any of that crap. It just means that it might make more sense financially to wait until next summer for him and then give him the 2-year extension at that point, if everything this season goes okay.
Does it make sense for you as the Suns? I mean, outside of the simply you want to take care of guys like this because it's a we're open for business sign for other stars, but outside of that, does it make sense?
Yes and no. I think that's why it's smart to wait this season and see what Kevin Durant does and see how the Suns perform, because then you have a full season to evaluate what's going on, the trajectory of the team, whether you can see this over the next 1 to 2 years. And if you don't at that point, then maybe it's time to sit down with Kevin Durant and say, okay, hey, I don't know. We don't know if this is the right partnership or whatever that conversation looks like. But if it does go well, then you can give him the 2-year extension, and you do lock in Devin Booker and Kevin Durant for the next 2 to 3 years. That's a win. Yeah, there are definitely risks here. There are cons here for sure. Like $64 million to an age 38 Kevin Durant it's risky. But if he continues to play at this high level like he has throughout his 30s, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and I also imagine a pro is, look, we've already committed to basically punching through this second apron wall. We've traded draft picks. We're already pot committed. So maybe we just need to continue to go on this path because, again, like the Chris Paul thing, it's not like you're going to get $60 million. You can go offer somebody else. There's going to be limitations, based on the reality of the salary cap. And as we know, you can go over for players that you currently have.
Yes.
But you're not recouping that if you're letting them walk in some way. So I think that's another pro is, hey, we're already all in. So, we've got to make that kind of a move because this is our path to winning in the foreseeable future.
That's a good point, because with all of these tax apron restrictions that are coming up, like it's not as easy to just like, okay, it didn't work out with the star, let's trade him. To who now? Like, who can take back more money than they're sending out in a trade? Who is allowed to, aggregate players in a trade anymore? Like half the league is dealing with either first or second tax apron restrictions. And maybe it looks different in a year or two. Maybe teams, really decide to duck under those aprons so they can maintain that type of flexibility and make blockbuster deals. But we don't know that. Like the NBA, if you look around with the play-in and with, just as much talent as there is in the league, there's so much parity now, and there's so many teams. We said this year, we could see as many as 5 to 6 teams arguably winning the West this year. And in the East, like it's probably going to be the Celtics, but you've got 3 or 4 teams that are going to give them a run for their money there too. So I don't see a lot of these teams saying, okay, we're going to let talent go and duck under like the Nuggets just did. I don't know. Your trade flexibility is going to be a problem moving forward. So it might be better to lock in a player like Kevin Durant, not piss off a superstar who, has a lot of people listening to him around the league, because we know firsthand how important reputation and culture is to free
100%.
agents and people wanting to come here. So it's probably not a good idea if you rub, a top 15 player of all time the wrong way.
Well, and I think the concept of the rebuild is dead in some ways in the NBA, right? Especially once you've gotten in these first and second aprons, or you've leveraged a little bit of your draft capital, or a lot of it in some teams' cases. So if you're moving on from a guy like that and it's via trade, you're probably swapping stars, with somebody else and hoping that combination works, right? Because it's going to be, can I match these salaries? Like how close can I get? And all these things that are not going to be ideal if you're trying to change the direction that you're going in. Because if you're a top heavy team, you're either going to, have to find a trade partner to completely blow it up, or you're going to have to let somebody just walk. Yeah. And I don't think either of those put you on a path to winning in the way that you're hoping. So.
No.
I think the days of like the normal type rebuild are done. I feel like now it's like you have to go full trust the process 76ers or not, right? Like that in between land doesn't really exist anymore. You're either, hey, we're going to lose every single game and tank for Victor Wembanyama, or you're going for the play-in. There's nothing in between. So if you do move on from KD or you do go into rebuild, you can't just middle ground it. You have to go full into it.
No, I think I think we're going to get even more in that polarized world as this settles out, right? We still have some of those middling teams, in the league, but I think you're going to see a lot of Washingtons or a lot of Suns kind of teams. You're either committed for the chase, or to your point, Eric, you are just going to drop to the bottom and try to accumulate anything you can and hope you hit draft luck at some point.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I truthfully can't ever see the Suns bottoming out until the post Devin Booker era.
Well, even with Book, I mean, Matt Ishbia, and obviously it's only been a couple of years, but the way that he's speaking, he's now been following up on it. So you don't have any reason to believe that he's just blowing smoke.
Right.
He said, hey, we're going to try to win every year. And then even when he gets to the minutia, he's like, hey, there will be some years where you're a little bit lower than others.
Right.
But I don't see him ever going out and being like, hey, we're going to tank this year.
No.
Even with Devin Booker, even without Devin Booker, he's the type of dude who's like, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to try to win at all costs.
But the rules may force some teams to do it even if they don't want to at some point, right? That's the tough part.
It will, but I don't think until Devin Booker comes to James Jones and Matt Ishbia and says, I've given you guys everything that I can, I need to be on a different team so I have a shot to win a title because this current regime has fallen or I don't believe in what we're building anymore. I don't think that'll be we're not full rebuilding until Devin Booker is gone, Kevin Durant is gone, all these guys are gone. I think if Devin Booker is still around, and even if KD and Bradley Beal are gone, you're still going to see Matt Ishbia aggressive as hell in free agency on the trade market. You're going to see them, like we've talked about this, Phoenix is an attractive destination now because of the new owner who's willing to spend, because of the new amenities and the things that they're constantly building here, because of Devin Booker and the appeal that he has. He's in the last couple of years attracted Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal to all want to come to play here. He is your favorite player's favorite player around the league. So if Devin Booker wants to be here and compete, that's what they're going to do. And the day that he doesn't believe in that and wants out, I think that's when we finally see the build from the bottom up.
I agree, but I almost feel like the league instituted these rules this way in the CBA to almost force churn in the league, right? To force where teams that maybe have been lower to rise up to the top while these others are kind of forced because of the financial situation to find themselves on their way back down a little bit unless you can get immensely creative, which I think some groups will figure out how to work their way through the system. There's always groups that figure that out, but I feel like the league is trying to create, to your point, that parity and navigating these situations like Kevin Durant's contract is going to determine where some of these teams sit. Do they decide that, it's a bit of an overpay potentially, but it's our path and it's the only choice we have, or we're willing to start regressing back to the back half because we just financially don't think that this wins us a title. It's going to be very interesting to see. And, but we haven't really given our opinions on what we think should happen. And on the other side of the break, we're going to do just that. Well, things are looking brighter this year, I'd say, than last year here in Phoenix for the Suns. And you know what? When things are bright, you need a good pair of shades. And our friends at Shady Rays are just that. They are quality shades built to last with premium polarized lenses and that won't break the bank. And I can tell you this, I wear them on the weekends, right? I'm not one of those people who wear them on the show. I don't know who wears
those
sunglasses.
guys suck.
I mean, I mean, if you do, you probably shouldn't be on shows. And as general manager, I can make that happen now. But you know what? When I'm outside, I like to wear my Shady Rays, my prescription Shady Rays, so I can see and protect my eyes. And that's one of the fantastic things that you can do. They've got prescription lenses. They've got styles for every person, right? Like if you are particular about it, they've got what you need. So exclusively for our listeners and viewers, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use the promo code PHNX and you're going to save 35% on polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And you know what? Flooring is important, right? It may be one of the most underrated parts of your home because you don't think about it all the time, but you're constantly putting your feet on it. You're looking at it all the time. People come over, they're judging your floors, right? Yeah. And it's important to have nice stuff, right? And when our friends at Empire Today come to your house and you're looking for flooring online, they're going to get you to the good stuff. Right?
Yeah.
They've got unbelievable flooring, and they have a floor visualizer when you're looking. You don't have to just judge by, that little picture on the web, I think it might look nice. You can actually see how to look in your home. And right now they've got a great deal for our listeners. When you sign up right now, you're going to be able to save $350 off new floors, and that's a hell of a deal. I'm not going to lie. So schedule your free in-home estimate today and use the promo code PHNX. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday/PHNX for details. All right, we've gotten to the part of the show where we're actually going to tell you what we think the Suns should do. And Gerald, I'm going to use you as a human shield. You go first.
Sure.
What should they do?
I think for both parties, it makes sense to wait until next summer. And I think for Kevin Durant, it's obvious, like he is coming off a healthy season, played 75 games. I'm sure that he believes that he will continue to stay healthy. And so that mitigates the risk there of waiting a year instead of taking the guaranteed money now. And then he gets an extra $64 million. I think for the Suns, it gives you a year to make sure, okay, Kevin Durant stayed healthy and we're heading in the right direction. We believe that this team can actually get us to the promised land. And if something goes bad, then you have the out there. As crappy as that sounds, you have the way to back out without committing substantial money, nearly $60 million, to a guy who is getting older and might be more injury prone as that happens. So I think it makes sense for both sides to wait until next summer. And then if they're still interested, if they still believe in the direction of this team, then you give them the 2-year extension at that point in time, with the understanding that you have committed to Kevin Durant and Devin Booker through 2028. And you are really banking on this superstar duo, whether it's with Bradley Beal, whether it's without Bradley Beal, whether it's with these current role players or without, getting you to the promised land.
Well, I 100% am waiting. I'm not making a deal before October 21st. It's bad business, and it has nothing to do with Kevin Durant, the person, or the player. It's bad business to just make that without seeing what plays out this year, because if it's another season like last year, you seriously have to consider blowing it up. Like in every way, shape, or form. Outside of Devin Booker, everybody has to be considered for moving on after this season if you have another year like last year and you don't even come close to reaching your goals. Now, if they win a title, there's a 2-year extension. Do whatever. Like you guys get as long as we can afford it to go after another title, right? That's just the way to be. Build the statues, have fun. Hopefully you can win another one, right? Yeah. But if you don't, I'm concerned. 38, is old in NBA years. And we've seen LeBron do it. We saw MJ kind of do it in Washington. We saw Karl Malone do it in the tail end of Utah, and then injuries took him down when he was with the Lakers. And Kareem did it late, earlier in the 80s, but he wasn't effective at 38, 39, 40. You are rolling the dice in a massive way, and everything about your franchise hinges on it, right? Every opportunity. If you haven't won a title, like you're now basically saying 38, 39-year-old Kevin Durant is going to get it done, even though it hasn't happened with Devin Booker and whatever we can backfill, right? Yeah. And that is a scary proposition for me. Okay. Like I love Kevin Durant's game. I appreciate what Kevin Durant has done in the league. I think he's on my Mount Rushmore of all time. But if you do not succeed or get very close this year, I have a long, hard, process I got to go through this offseason to decide if I'm committing 1 year, let alone 2 years more than what I'm already, tied to. Because the summer of 2026 could be a reset if you wanted it to be, right? Yeah. But, and am I at a point where this has run its course by then? That's my fear. I don't want to commit, almost $120 million, or maybe a little over, to have maybe a chance at that point. Like,
Mhm.
I just,
You're afraid of commitment.
well, that's true in and of itself. I'm afraid of anything when it comes to the Phoenix Suns, being too long and lasting too long.
Yeah.
Like, this year is everything to me. I know people don't want to hear championship or bust. They just want a fun year, maybe get to the Western Conference Finals. No, to me, it's championship or bust because you have to make too many decisions that are going to directly impact the next 3, 4, maybe 5 years of this franchise, where you don't know if you don't win it this year, you're putting a lot of faith into guys that haven't been able to get it done, getting it done when they're another year older, when there's another chance for them to be injured. All these things that come into play, that's a lot of money to commit without a guarantee.
It is. So in your mind, if they don't win the title this year, you are strongly reconsidering giving a 2-year extension next summer, or is it fair to say that like the context of how they fall short matters? Because I do think that
the context of how they fall short. Like, if you get to the finals and something fluky happens, okay,
right.
You get to the Western Conference Finals, you go 7 games, and it's some kind of final shot. Okay, maybe you can convince me, but if you don't perform, if it's a first or second round exit, I'm not even talking 1-year extension. I'm saying we might need to go another year to figure. You've got that additional year on the deal. Let's see what happens then, and then we both can make a decision if this is a marriage that we should continue doing. Like, I just, if you commit after another failure of a year, then what are you really doing?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough though, because I think if you look at the makeup of this team, like, yes, if they fall short next year, you really need to find a way to retool in probably 90% of the possible scenarios for why you fell short. Like, there's only a small selection that I would be like, okay, we can run it back. We're comfortable with that. We still have a chance here. I struggle because Kevin Durant is probably, I mean, he is one of the 2 pieces that you would want to keep from this year's roster for, as long as he can stay healthy and play at a high level, which I personally think will be for a while, just because, you brought up some of the names that historically have played well, but even in those cases, we saw some drop off. I do think Kevin Durant's game puts him in kind of that LeBron MJ tier of like, yeah, this guy is still going to be incredible. Even like, because MJ's years with the Wizards, he was like in his 40s at that point.
No,
so
he was 38,
like,
39.
No, he was 40.
I think the final year he
was 40s, like, because he was and he was still putting up 20. But like, I think KD is in that top elite tier of like LeBron, where we didn't see guys putting up stats in KD's age 35 season outside of LeBron.
Agreed.
So I think as long as he stays healthy, he's going to continue to do that. But I agree with you that waiting until next summer when we have more context makes a lot more sense than tacking on an extra year now just to silence all the trade rumors or Kevin Durant wants out crap that we know is not true.
Well, and even if I get into next summer, and I know that one side would want 2, but I might say if this doesn't pan out the way you want it, I might say, hey, I'll give you the 1.
Yeah,
and you're gonna get more money because things will go up, but I don't know that 2 makes sense. Like, 2 is a lot of commitment, and then at that point you haven't even had an opportunity to consider changing up anything, anything major. So then you're at the end of Book's contract there too, and then it's like, am I at the point where I might lose everything at that point because I haven't even had the opportunity to try to have another iteration with Devin Booker and give hope that that next iteration might be the one that gets over the hump. And that's what terrifies me, is if both these guys go through 2028 and that's it, like that's where they both have a contract that ends. And obviously that'll likely be Kevin Durant's swan song, but does Devin Booker go, it's been fun, and I don't think he will, but that fear is enough to make me think twice.
I get what you're saying, but at that point, Devin Booker will be, 31, 32? Like if he hasn't won a title with Phoenix by then, the Suns will either need to have a very set plan to be like, we will retool over this summer and you will still have a championship caliber roster. Or it would be time for Book to kind of move on. And I'm not saying that I want that for him or for the Suns, but I think just looking at the history of the league, if a guy has been with the same team for like 13 years and hasn't won a title, he's either staying there till the end or he's going to go somewhere else to try and win it all. Yeah. And I think if it happens in 2028, at least you can look yourself in the mirror and say, we got Kevin Durant for this guy. We got, Chris Paul. We had multiple cracks at it. We couldn't get it done. I don't think there's anything wrong with going all in and failing. My issue would be is if those last 2 years are just an absolute dumpster fire because KD can't stay healthy or they couldn't build around them properly.
All right, y'all are depressing me. All right, y'all are depressing me.
That's the reality of when you're going to project into this.
It's September 25th, 2024. Yeah. Right? Like I'm not saying that any of you are wrong at all, but I'm just saying it's like, oh man, I did not want to think about that today. But I think,
then maybe you should have come up with a better topic if you didn't want to go into this. Huh?
All right, let's blame me now. Let's point the fingers now.
If we're talking about 2-year extensions, it has to be mentioned because it goes hand in hand.
No. I get it. I think the main thing, because Espo, what you were saying before about if KD wants a 2-year extension, maybe you would only offer him a 1 depending on how the season goes. I think the one thing you don't want to do when Kevin Durant is on your team is play that game. Yeah. Because he's shown that he will play that game and he'll play it hard and he will find his way to another team. And obviously the Suns gave up a ton to get him. But if you're talking about a KD on a very short contract this much later in his career, you're not going to flip that asset for as much as what you got him. And I don't want to play that game. So if he wants to be here and he's still good enough, I say keep him here because at least if you have him on a 2-year extension, you can get more if you need to actually trade him at the end of the day.
Like I said, this year is everything in that thought process because if this year is a disappointment again, no, you can't commit to that because your path to a championship is severely narrowed if you don't do it or get close this year because belief is part of it too. And you're going to have to continue to get the Tyus Jones of the world on cheap deals because they believe there's a real opportunity to win a title. If you don't have that in this new NBA, you're in trouble. You're not going to be able to accomplish it. So you need this team to succeed this year. The easiest path to getting his money is getting to the finals, winning this year. Like that's the reality of it. Win this year, have a great regular season, get to the finals, and then we all know in those 7 games anything can happen. We saw it with the Suns and the Bucks, but you have to get to the finals and prove that this is a team that's worthy of that. That's how you get your money. That's how anybody should get their money is by succeeding at their job.
I get it, but you're not going to convince Kevin Durant if he waits this offseason. If he doesn't sign the extension, you're not going to convince him to take a 1-year extension next year. It's either 0 or 2.
No, like, I get that.
If he waits, he's not going to agree to 1.
I agree. I agree on that front. I'm just saying, if you're the team, I don't know what that.
But even from a team perspective, like I understand some people might view a 2-year contract more of an albatross, bigger money, whatever. But if you were talking about controllable assets for somebody like Kevin Durant, who, yes, has moved around teams, right? But one of the big things when he got traded to Phoenix was, look at how much he has left on his contract. You're not just renting Kevin Durant. If KD doesn't want to be here, or if you don't want KD to be there, but he wants his money, sign him to the 2-year extension with the intent to trade him and get more back because he's under contract for more.
The trade game in the NBA now is not what it used to be, and getting things in return, like we talked at the top of the show, is going to be a minefield to try to figure it out.
So you might as well have the 2 years instead of the 1.
No, because then
it depends entirely on how he looks at that point. If he's still Kevin Durant, then I think you can get something out of him, but your trade partners are going to be severely limited, and even more so by the fact that if Kevin Durant is getting traded, he's going to have say in where he's getting traded. He's not the type of player that you can just, send him to the Wizards and be done with it. You have to send him somewhere that makes sense, that can actually trade for him, and that has the assets that you want. It's a lot of boxes to check, and with the tax apron thing, that complicates it further. I don't think it's impossible, but I do think it is a lot more difficult than it would have been, say, like 2 or 3 years ago.
This is simple math for me. if you do not have a successful year this year, you do not sign any contract extension. You say, let's let this play out. Let's see, and then if we win one, we can talk 3-year extension at the end of it. But right now, business wise, we got to make the smart decision. If you win this year, you get really close, you give them the full 2 and you just say, all right, this is our chance, right? Anything short of a championship in the next 4 years, if you don't win one in the next 4 years, is a complete and utter failure of this era of Suns basketball, because they thought they were building a super team. And if you do not win a title, you've screwed up. Yeah. It's that plain and simple. And so, like, to me, that's the simple math here. Have a really good season. At least make the finals. You get your 2-year deal. If not, we say, hey, you know what? We've got contracts here. We'll see what happens over the next year, 2 years, and see where we are. And then we discuss, a contract extension at that point. That's where we are. That's what we've agreed to. And that's what we move on with, because winning a title is the only thing that matters here.
I see what you're saying. I will say there are risks if you wait this year, if you fall short, if you tell them we're not going to give you an extension yet, we're going to see what happens. You are going into a final year with Kevin Durant being an expiring contract. And we know the way that narratives build around Kevin Durant and this team. I'm not saying you extend him just so that you can have no distractions or anything like that. But I am saying that last year would be a lot more difficult, because everyone would be speculating, is he going to re-up? Are they going to trade him before the trade deadline? If this season, if they have an injury early on and they start off the season 500 through December, like, those are all things that you have to have a contingency plan for.
Matt Ishbia does not seem to care about narrative, and I respect him for it.
But there's a difference between narrative and having a tangible impact on the team. Because Matt Ishbia is not out there. If it becomes a distraction, like we saw that last year in Golden State, I don't know.
And I also, like, Espo, I don't disagree with any of your line of thinking or your thought process or like what you're saying in a vacuum. But then I think that there's just this extra element of talking about, well, it's Kevin Durant in there as well. Same thing that Gerald said. If you're going into the last year of Kevin Durant, he's not under contract. We have seen just with last season, with the Vogel, everything going on, if there is an inkling of bad vibes or something off, the chemistry of this team is not so great to the point where they overcome it. And having somebody that late in his career who's that respected in the basketball world and not giving him an extension and paying him, saying just play it out, well, maybe it's the right move in a vacuum. It might be the wrong move because you want to take care of him and you want to get assets back for him as well.
I don't care if it's Michael Jordan. I don't care if it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I don't care if it's Jesus. I do what's right by my franchise and deal with whatever that is. I do not get held hostage because somebody, was one of the greats at any point, and you're now at the end of what you're trying to do. That's how I stand, and I'd stand on business like that. And I think Matt Ishbia is a guy that's going to look at it like that too. It's bottom line, win me a championship. That's what I'm here for. I think CBK, though, brings up an interesting point, and so does Axel. It's all about keeping Book happy.
Yeah.
Whatever keeps Book happy is likely what you decide to do here. So, I think you're here to tell a lot about how Devin Booker feels about their current situation based on the way they handle it.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And you never want to, because we've seen superstar players, their front offices make decisions exclusively for their star players, and it's come back to haunt them. The Suns should still be focused on making winning moves that will make Devin Booker happy, because they're winning moves, not just because it's what Devin Booker wants. But I do think that, Book is the face of the franchise. He would obviously have some say at that point, and I think he and KD would probably be pretty open in communication about what they see for this team. So that is something to definitely keep in mind in all of this.
All right. If you want more on this topic and the insight and inside information. Gerald has it all for you over at gophnx.com. Become a diehard, unlock that article, and become one of the smarter Suns fans in the Valley. Because that's what Gerald's here to do, is educate you and help you better understand the Suns while entertaining you along the way. So highly recommended. Do that and get those discounts and the free shirt and hat that of your choice. So Gerald, we've come to the end of the program, and I'm just going to throw out our social handles right now. You can follow Eric at Eric Ruby with a K. You can follow Gerald at Gerald Bourguet. You can follow the show. I'm just falling apart here at the end. You can follow the show at PHNX.
This is why we have
Suns.
the over 38 rule.
You can follow me at Espo. And you know what? If you like the over 38 rule, get stuffed. Ahoy, hoy.
We all silly like the mayor.